Hello, world. Welcome to the Elise Morgan Experience. Today's guest is Julian Bermudez. He is a psychedelic therapist. Julian helps people transform suffering into self-trust, agency, and inner liberation through tools like self-inquiry and reflection, stillness, or psychedelic integration. His work invites people to rebuild their inner relationships with honesty, gentleness, and joy. The result is a greater capacity for awareness, choice, and ultimately liberation from old patterns. Welcome to the show, Julian. I am so excited for this conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thanks for having me.
I'm so excited. So let's just start with the usual, what I ask my guests. Who are you and how did you get to where you are now? Like a little bit of a backstory on who you are.
hmm So my backstory in a nutshell is I was born in Detroit, Michigan, and I had two parents. One was 19, my dad, and my mom was 21.
Mm.
And so when I came around, needless to say, they didn't want me.
Oh.
And to make matters a little bit more complex, is there was a big racial divide between the two. My mom was Um, she was German. Her mother moved here after the war from Stuttgart, Germany. And my dad, he was the son of two immigrants as well. His dad was from San Juan, Puerto Rico, and his mom was from Mexico. And so my dad's side of the family had this really intense work ethic. And so they acquired a fundamental amount of resources and they established themselves as what we might call lower middle class, to where my mom didn't ever have that. So she lived in a trailer park and was on social services and things like that. And so as I was growing up in this highly segregated racial area, when I would model one parent, as children do, the other parent despised me or hated me for it. And so, no matter where I went, I was always rejected or exiled or punished for just being myself. And this created a tremendous amount of emotional and internal pain inside of me. And I found myself on my own at a very young age. At about age 13, I totally started fending for myself. And throughout the next, 10 years of my life, I was primarily focused on survival.
Mm.
And once I came up for air and got myself in a foundation underneath me, I realized I was carrying so much pain around that just living life wasn't exactly on the table. Um, I was going to either find myself in prison or dead or both in a very short amount of time, and both of those were in the equation. So I started really trying to figure out what I could do with this pain that I was carrying around. For the first time in my life, I started facing it, asking questions, started understanding what was going on, what I was carrying. And this led me down a path of first going into college, which was a big deal for me at that time and from where I came from. And I was studying psychology, clinical psychology, looking into addictions because my family, my community was ravaged by addictions, you could say. And I was finding myself constantly distracting, disconnecting with various addictions as well. And so I went into university and started studying this, and I just wasn't finding the answers that I was looking for. And so through my own independent research, I started finding teachers who were in this field themselves. And they talked a lot about the research, the literature, and the process of this mode of healing. And so I started reviewing the literature. All of my coursework was dedicated to this mode of therapy, which was not well accepted at this time. And so after I graduated, then I moved out to the West Coast where there was a little bit more of a culture around psychedelic therapy. And I continued my own self-exploration, self-study, and kept studying with various teachers as well. And once I got some traction in really addressing my own pain and started to transform it and started recovering some agency and some responsibility for myself. Once these things really started to click and work for me, then I found that other people started asking me to help them out along the way. And over time, once I was able to soothe or comfort or process some of this old pain and let go of some of those patterns, I found myself working with people full time, and that's where I am today.
Wow, that's like a movie story. Um, and I have a sense of humor, so I was going to say that's just traumatic being born in Detroit, Michigan, but that's a whole another podcast episode. I'm just making a joke, but
Hmm.
I'm curious as to because you didn't jump, but like you were 13, went out on your own. You have those feelings when we're children, and yours was very like telling. You have like severe trauma, like what was going on, like is actually can pinpoint it. And some people have trauma and they can't pinpoint it. And I'd like to discuss that. But for you, like you had said, from 13 to 23, you're on like dangerous path. You don't know where that was going to end up. So what made you face it? Like, what do you think made you say, like, I want to look into this, as opposed to what most people don't have that foresight, like to say, what is going on here? Like, what made you look into it on your own?
There were a few things. Um, I don't know if I could really attribute it to one single thing that had happened. Um, I could say on the one hand, my father's mother, she was Mexican and came from a native lineage there. And while we had very few conversations, her and I, she told me things, especially right before I moved away, that we came from a lineage of healers. She didn't have the terminology to describe this, and she carried around so much shame from her ethnicity because she was trying to flee because she was being ethnically persecuted and things like that. So it was very difficult for her to communicate it, but she was telling me that we came from a lineage of healers and visionaries, and that was deep inside of me. That was something that I had that was instilled in me from a very early age, not from any direct cultural, we were very disconnected from our ancestors to say the least. But when certain things would happen to me, you disconnect mentally, you go away mentally. I would go into this dream world, and I had just these incredible visceral experiences. And I had a near-death experience when I was maybe 10 years old. And I think that that really catalyzed something inside of me. Then, when I was 23, I had another near-death experience. Again, I was on that path where my life just wasn't going to last long the way I was living. The pain was just so great, and I was doing anything I could to get away from that pain. And so, when I had this second near-death experience when I was 22, maybe 23 tops, I think I was 22, it really awakened that fire inside of me that was connected with my lineage. And once that got started, you know, when we carry around so much pain, we adapt to it in the ways that we can. And so substances, behaviors, things like that are the way that we disconnect from it. And so what I did is I traded one addiction for another, and I got into the intellectual arena. And my idea was to figure out what I was going through more than anything. And so then once I started going to college, then I replaced the disconnections, the distractions, the various addictions that I had with I'm going to be important, I'm going to be needed, I'm going to be recognized and respected because of my intellectual capacity. And just going down that path really steered me away. The third thing was probably that I had two incredible dogs, and these guys were par none the most influential teachers that I had in my life at this time. And if it wasn't for them, I don't know if I would have steered off of the path that I was on.
Well, that's incredible for you to say that about dogs, because we have dogs, and I understand what you're speaking about with dogs, and they are spirit animals, if you will. And I can understand that other people who don't have animals might not understand that, but I do. So I appreciate that. I also appreciate that all along, even when you were young, you had these gifts, and you're saying it's like in your lineage, and not everyone has it in their lineage and they have the gifts, but you had these dreams. So it seems like that you had these gifts anyway. And I'm glad that you went down the path to be able to utilize them for other people. And not many people seek out college or intellect as a substitute for their emotional pain. So it's all like the path for you to bring you to here. So you're an unbelievable healer in that respect, because it would have been a shame to go down the other paths. But let's talk about that in and of itself. how humans, for whatever reason, I'd like you to explain a little bit for in layman's terms for the audience, why when we're doing all these things, we want to escape the actual feeling of the emotion and the emotional pain and then reliving it. And but then we also seek it out unconsciously if we don't deal with it. You know what I mean? So like water seeks her own level. So it's all you know, you don't like it, but that's all you do going forward in life. So is there an explanation scientifically why human beings don't want to face pain, emotional pain, and process it and go through it so they can get to the other side?
Mhm. Yeah. So it's not so much that humans don't want to face it. We, when we have the resources, when we have the support, when we have the foundation, we're able to navigate all of these emotions. These emotions are a part of who we are. They've evolved with us.
Right.
They're very important signals from our body, giving us indications of how to navigate the environment that we're in. But a lot of things happen to us in our formative years and in our culture, especially today, that really force us to suppress or disconnect from those emotions. One, for instance, on the surface, harmless parenting technique is that when your child throws a tantrum or is expressing anger, is to put them in a timeout. In other words, to disconnect from them until they can learn to regulate that emotion. So, in other words, what we're doing is we're threatening a child here with a thing that's most important to them, the relationship, the connection with others. And we tell them that that emotion is bad and they have to learn to suppress it in order to maintain their attachments with other people. There's so many examples of how our society fosters the suppression of our emotions. So this is a learned adaptive behavior that we develop. This is a way of adapting to the pain of disconnection that is very common in our society today.
Wow. Yeah, that's what I meant before was some people don't have severe trauma, and it could be just that you through tantrums when you were a child and you felt abandoned, let's say, or punished for feeling whatever you were feeling. So I see that connection there. So that's why a lot of times with people, and we'll get to the psychedelics and therapy and all that, they'll say like, no, I'm good. I don't really have any issues, but they don't realize it because it might not be this big major league like child abuse situation or something like that, and they're walking around with emotional pain and baggage that they're maybe not experiencing life to their absolute fullest. They might not even realize that. So I'm glad you brought that into the conversation. I call it, and it's from Abraham Hicks, so I don't want to take any credit for it, but you have an emotional guidance system, and that's what we have them for. Emotions aren't bad or wrong or good or bad or anything like that. They're there to process and greet and meet and feel them so that you are having the full human experience. And I do know that you're right. We're just taught to be quiet and don't speak and don't, be, especially older, children are to be seen and not heard. And, you know, people might say that's not trauma, but it's traumatic at the time. So a lot of adults and future adults are walking around with a lot of emotional pain, which brings people to addiction, which brings people to numbing themselves. And like you said, society is on that board as well. So before we get into psychedelics, I wanted to get your opinion or your knowledge on antidepressants, let's say, or anti-anxiety medication, which seems to be really readily used very easily to get and just given, in my opinion, too quickly to people. So let's start with that.
So the antidepressants, the SSRIs, the benzos, all of these drugs that we get, all of these, they can be very useful in very specific circumstances. So if somebody that I want to work with is their emotions are so overwhelming and so unstable that they can't have a conversation to look at these patterns, then these medications can be very useful to help stabilize things in the short term, to give us enough of a foundation to start to be able to connect with those emotions and learn how to process them and soothe them. But for the most part, the outside of the short-term stabilization, I don't know if I see much benefit in those medications. And in our current medical system, there's no foundational um, teaching or therapy that happens in conjunction with the prescription of these medications. The doctors don't have enough time to talk to you about the pain you're carrying around. They don't have the time to ask you, what was your relationship with your parents like? What was your childhood house like? What did you do with your emotions? Who did you talk to about it? They don't have the time for that. They come in, they got 15 minutes, 30 minutes if you're really lucky. They have a whole checklist of questions that they have to ask. Independent of what you're there for. They have all these check boxes that they have to fill, and then they got to get to their next client. They're going to see 50, 60, 70, 100 people in one day. So they don't have the capacity to work with these. Um, so yeah, the antidepressants, they don't take away the pain. They don't teach us how to work with the pain. They don't teach us how to process it, how to express it, how to soothe it. All that it does is stabilize it for a short term, but it can have long-term consequences if those short terms are not, if those short-term pains are not addressed.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you brought that up because, like I said, and this is my opinion in society. It's just like a band-aid given out to even children at this point. And in our pre-conversation before we recorded, I don't know if you remember, but I had a sister that committed suicide and she was going through some things and they gave her the medications right away. And that's kind of when she went downhill. And that was many years ago. And now, like on all the commercials, even non-antidepressant drugs, they say like, don't give this to children under 18 years old. It causes suicidal thoughts, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's kind of what happened with her. Um, but to get back to your point is that, first of all, they were created, I believe they were even created for short term. It wasn't like that, let's just make this and this is someone's supposed to be on these forever, let's say. So that's what people are not understanding. Like when I speak about psychedelic therapy and you as well, I don't know if you've encountered this, that they think that you're saying that, oh, antidepressants are wrong, don't ever take them, and that's not true. And you just said why. There's less people than you think in the world that need the antidepressants than they make it out to be, in my opinion. Most people could maybe try the therapy or this other modalities first, and then if it doesn't work, and like you said, you might have somebody that can't even they can't even have the normal conversation so that they can sit with their thoughts different. So that's a little thorn in my side with society, and I don't know how it got so bad where just doctors, not only do they not have the time, they don't have the training, and they don't have the uh like you said, capability with their time, or I don't even know if they want to deal with people's psychology and family and all that stuff when you walk into a regular doctor. So the reason why I'm so happy that you're on the show is that I want to bring attention to this more so, because a lot of people I speak with, either their child's on something or they got something from their doctor, and I don't think they know any better because that's just the way society is. So it's like you go to your doctor or whatever because you're feeling something, you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling upset about life, something traumatic may have happened, and you just want help. And then the knee-jerk reaction is, here, take this. And then they immediately maybe feel better because they're not as overwhelmed. But now they would, like you just said, they would never learned how to regulate their emotion, what they're going through. And to me, it also numbs you that you feel nothing. And we're not supposed to feel nothing. We're supposed to feel it all. So I want people to be educated that there are other avenues. And just because it's very popular in society here, and especially in the United States, I don't know about other countries, that anyone could just walk in and get an antidepressant or an anti-anxiety medication. And there are better ways. So what avenues would you suggest for people who want that? They go to the doctor, like who would they go to first instead of going, let's say, going to an MD or even a psychiatrist? Because I believe psychiatrists just administer medication now too.
Yeah, it is quite a conundrum, this pickle we are in our society. It's quite telling that the more experts that we have in medical and mental health and in emotional health and in parenting, the more problems we have. there's an interesting correlation between the rise of all these experts and the rise of all of our problems. In
Wow.
terms of who to go to, yeah, I mean, if you go to a doctor, chances are, like I said earlier, it's going to be a short appointment. They don't have the capacity or the desire, as you mentioned. You can go to a psychiatrist, but their main MO is medications. You can go to a therapist, and there are a wide range of therapists that are out there. And, I don't know what the stats would look like depending on where you're at, but from my experience, for every one good therapist that I would find, I might find 50 or 100 bad ones. In the sense that therapists are also in the same boat as the doctors are. To become a therapist, we're looking at a minimum of a master's degree. A lot of them have PhDs or PsyDs in addition to that. So there's a lot of time, there's a lot of resources, financial resources that go into becoming a therapist. And then you come out strapped with debt and you're in this society that is like running on a treadmill at speed 10. When I see therapists come out of school and they get licensed, the first objective is to fill up your calendar with as many clients as you can because seeing clients equals making money. And when I was in graduate school taking therapy classes, it was very common for the professors to tell us that your main objective is to get your client coming back. And they're saying it from a good intention, we could say, in the sense that you can't help somebody if they don't come and talk to you. But also, they're looking at it as you have to keep your calendars full. If you don't see clients, you don't make money. And so the therapists have very low capacity to interact with people. So when I work with people, one of the most important things is for me to be able to be present with them, to be able to see them, to see what they're going through, to hear them, to understand them, and to see beyond what they're telling me. Right? I have to see their relationship with themselves. I have to see the way that they process emotions, independent of the way that they're describing it from their own conscious perception. And if I am filling up my calendar and going from one client to the next, by the time a therapist is seeing their fifth person that day, they don't remember who they talked to earlier, right? So having the capacity to work with people is very important, and most therapists don't have that. They can't have that. You can't survive after in the system without having a ton of clients. So for people who are looking for support, um, I think that your best resources here are patience, persistence, and really trying to tap into that intuition, that gut feeling, which is part of the therapy in itself. Because when you work with somebody that is going to see you and hear you and understand you, and also provide some inquiry and some challenging questions, you'll know it. Because a lot of these therapists, they will just validate what you're saying, and you'll just go round and round in this circle of showing up weekly and just venting and just, oh, you're right. You're right to feel that way. You're right to act that way. You're beautiful as you are, so on and so forth. And I mean, I've had those therapists too, and round you go every week, and nothing changes. So, for looking for support in this sense for people, patience, really take your time, try and look at these people, evaluate what you're seeing, right? Look at the way that they talk about who they're working with, look at their resources, how many clients do they see, what approaches do they take, have conversations, trust yourself. When you interact with somebody who has uh, malicious or perhaps innocent intentions that are not in line with what you're looking for, you know it. But a lot of the times we suppress that, so it's very difficult to do that right away. But yeah, it's very challenging to find serious, solid help today. But it is out there.
Yeah, and I don't want to bash therapists at all because I do know there are some great therapists, and I would think most therapists get into it because they truly do, like you said, it's innocently, you truly do want to help people. But I think it's very important what you just said. Like, I think the therapists, it's themselves need to embody what the patient needs almost, which is the inner peace, the regulated emotions and knowing who they are. And I don't even know, and I'm putting down therapists, but I don't know if as many therapists or social workers even, right? Because social workers can give help too, have gone through the things that I feel and you probably feel they need to like go through in order to be able to be, for lack of a better word, a true healer.
I agree with you.
And I want to reiterate that we aren't healers. We don't heal you. We just guide you into healing yourself. And that's why I get a little bit of the same thing as you, like, where are the good therapists? Because two reasons. One, if a woman, let's say, is going through a really bad divorce and her husband's this, that, and the other thing, and then you go to a therapist, male or female, and they've never even been married or never even been divorced, I feel like they may be able to help you book wise, however they learned in school to, like you said, go round and round, your feelings validated. But I just feel this substance, and maybe it's different now with the new age stuff coming out a little bit more and more, and people being more open to uh yoga, meditation, all those type of things, and journaling. And I don't know, I haven't been to a therapist in many years, but I just feel like they're not, it's almost like medical doctors. They're taught in a tunnel, and they're taught like this one way. And I think it's very antiquated in the way that they're taught how to help people. And I do think therapists help people. There are many people who get benefits, but I think it would be so much better if there was some component in the schooling of all the other, what is it, Westerns. Are we Western? I'm really bad with with the United States, like the Asian culture and the tribal stuff and all that higher level of thinking and going within more. And I think therapists are not teaching people to go within. They're still having them look outside of themselves or whatever. I'm not really able to articulate what I want to say, but
You got
I
to do your own work.
exactly. And I don't think that I've seen that with therapists, psychiatrists, and all that you have to do your own work. I mean, they may send a journal, like start journaling, but I feel like they're almost guiding you to not go through the process of the emotional pain, which is not just talking about it. Venting and talking about what you've been through is not healing.
Sure.
So, um, what do you feel like people in our field, let's say the healers of the world, the yogis, the therapists, the integration coaches, the people who serve the medicine, even if they don't serve the medicine, they're in this space, would be someone that you could confidently say to somebody, go to one of these people first before you would say go to a therapist?
So the doctors, the therapists, they all get into it, as you mentioned, because they do want to help people. When we really break down that intention right there to help people, what we'll almost always find, I've never seen an exception to this, and I know lots of doctors and lots of therapists. I've never once seen an exception to this, is doctors, therapists become doctors and therapists because they want to help themselves. And well, in other words, we carry around this tremendous pain. So for me, when I was carrying around the pain of not being good enough because my parents didn't want me, I wasn't valued, I wasn't respected, how do I deal with that? Well, then I go out in the world and I'm going to become valued and respected and needed and important by other people. How do you do that? You become a doctor. You're going to be needed. You're going to be wanted. You're going to be valued. Gosh, people are going to need you every moment of your life. Um, I was on that path until my teacher said to me, "Why are you trying to be a doctor so bad?" And I didn't want to hear it. And I come up with my arguments. I want to help people. I want to do this. And then he pointed out very artistically that I'm just trying to be important. I have this self-belief of I'm not important. And that's what I really am trying to address. And that's very common throughout all of these fields is we have so many people who are trying to be important, trying to be respected, trying to be valued, trying to be needed, and they don't have that themselves without that job. And that's why there's such low capacity, and that's why they're not able to really help people because they haven't gone through that healing themselves.
Right.
You can find that exact same pattern in the spiritual communities as well. Um, it's very well known that there have been, very highly respected, esteemed meditation centers where the gurus there are sexually assaulting women as they come through. You can go through and work with shamans and indigenous healers, and they've been co-opted, corrupted by all the capital and the currency and all the tourism that's coming through, and it's become an industry, a trade that no longer serves the actual values. And you can very easily get swept up in that, whether it's in the traditional medical field or in the spiritual community, anywhere. These are dynamics that we have to be very aware of.
Right. And because we, no matter what, we're all human first, and humans have egos, and the best of us can have that take over. And it's happened in our community a place where we first went for our ceremonies, ayahuasca, where the person that started it, I believe he started it with good intention, and then it started to grow and make money. And then it's since closed down because the greed took over and the not caring. And, you
Hmm.
know, there's more unhealed people than healed in our world, obviously. And when people are focused on just healing and being happy within, then the answers will come to what maybe what your purpose is in life. And I do understand that with the doctors, or I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be important, I want my parents to love me, whatever. And those jobs are there for the people who are healed as well, right? You could be healed and say, I want to be a doctor. It's just that the people that are going there, maybe going for what they feel are valid reasons, but I think it becomes their own prison, to be honest with you, because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. And I'm not saying they're not doing it to help, but they're doing it because they, like you said, they want to be important. So I'll be a doctor, not like, oh, I'll be important. So I'm going to be an artist because that's what I love to do. I love painting. They don't, they're looking for that outside validation from what society says is an important job or an important occupation.
It's
So
another addiction.
it is, in a sense. It
It,
can
pro
be.
it provides short-term relief. It disconnects us from the pain that we were in, and it has long-term consequences and an inability to give it up. Being addicted to status, to power, to money, to respect, to being valued, to work, all of these things, these are all adaptations to pain.
I truly believe it because I've seen it with people I know, and I don't want to take away from there are wonderful doctors out there that are caring, loving, healing people, but it's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, oh, I guess I'll try and be a doctor. It comes from outside in. Like that might be a really good occupation. And then it's in taking away from the emotion and ego about it. It's that even if you want to be there, the way they teach doctors in the United States at least is just tunnel vision,
Mhm.
very old and antiquated. So that brings me to what you do with psychedelics. Is it something that you only use with people that are open and willing, or only for certain people? Like, how does that work with the psychedelics in your practice?
In terms of who I work with,
Yeah. Well, when they come in, is it something that you utilize all the time, or is it only for like, oh, this person will benefit
mm,
from that,
I understand.
person won't?
Mhm. So the word psychedelic is broken into two parts, psychedelic. Psyche referring to all the immaterial aspects of who we are, our emotions, our mind, our spirituality, so on. And then delic is emerging or manifesting. So when you put these two together, what you have is a deep connection to yourself. And this is what almost everybody experiences during a psychedelic experience is a deep connection to themselves and the world around them. This is what I try to facilitate from the very beginning whenever I work with somebody. So there's a very big difference between having a psychedelic experience and working with a psychedelic substance,
Mhm.
right? We can have the psychedelic experience in so many different ways, and they have been well respected throughout cultures as far back as we have human history. Um, so when I start working with somebody, this is what we try and do right away. And the means for this experience is through inquiry, self-reflection, to try to really take this honest and truthful inventory of what we're experiencing internally, and and to look at what do we do with those feelings or those patterns that we have inside of us. So the first thing is just to try to understand what's there. And then what I do is I try to pay very close attention to the relationship. that people have with whatever pattern it is. Do they like it? Do they dislike it? Do they welcome it? Do they fight it? Do they exile it? Do they sit with it? Do they embrace it? Do they fight it? Do they struggle with it? So on. And then we try to cultivate a practice, just like we're doing, like we're talking right here, right now, of being in tune with this pain or these patterns or these perceptions that are inside of us, being in tune and being present with them constantly and seeing how this pain from the past shows up in the present. So this is 90% of the work that we do here is constantly trying to be in tune with this. This is how I help people prepare for a larger psychedelic experience, one that's induced. So I help people prepare and I help them integrate afterwards. And so if we can really build this practice of self-inquiry and being present with what we're experiencing, trying to understand where it comes from, how long it's been here, what needs it has, and we can start to cultivate some agency and responsibility in terms of what do we do with these feelings? What do we do with these perceptions, these behavioral patterns that we're in? Can we start to make some choices instead of being on the default pattern that's entrenched in us? Then when somebody wants to have a psychedelic experience, we can use that as a tool to go in much deeper to that same area that we've been working on and process that pain some more, connect with that pain some more, soothe it some more, comfort it in some ways that we might not have been able to do. And so that's the gist of the practice right there is the psychedelic experience itself is there throughout the entire thing, but the induced one is a very small portion of what we do.
So the psychedelic experience, meaning like you just bring it on just from the way you have people speak to themselves, not with
Mhm.
any type of medicine,
That's right. Yeah,
right?
just from a asking questions and asking the right questions and asking them in very specific ways, really helping people to channel their attention inwards and focus on the things that are coming up for them and their relationship with what's going on. Like most people, when we have all these distractions, and I see it all day, I see it when people are driving their cars right now, is they're on their phones. They can't get off of their phones for just a few seconds because the pain of being present is so great that they can't be present. And then it causes more pain. So just to tune into our internal states, and if I can help direct people's attentions into those internal states and understand what this internal state is and how it got to be this way, and to see what our relationship is with it, that's a psychedelic experience right there. And anybody can have that at any time, at any place. And the goal is to try to have that experience of being connected and attuned to what we're experiencing and present in this moment all the time. And there's no psychedelic experience that will do that for you. So we really have to build the practice ourselves without any external aid. Now, don't get me wrong, there's times where the conditioned mind is so strong, and those defense mechanisms to keep us from looking at the pain are so great and so strong that, yes, an induced psychedelic experience can be very powerful and very useful here. But for the most part, I find that if I can ask the right questions and ask them in the right way, that I can get through those defenses and through those barriers, and I can help people get through them themselves.
I love that because I should just heard something today, like most people aren't in the present moment and just be in the present moment. And how can you be okay in the present moment with just yourself? And I don't think many people, like you said, can't do that. And talk about addiction. Phones are a new addiction for society. No one can put their phone down. And like you said, because what would happen if you just sat with you? And I like that you inquire about that first and foremost, because that's the most important is the relationship with yourself and your inner being. I also wrote, do you deal with anything, um, how trauma gets stuck in the body? Do you help
Of
people?
course.
Because the
Mhm.
listeners that if you're listening, if you don't know this, I mean, the people follow me, so they may have heard. Even for my own self, I mean, I've been working out since I'm 14 years old, and of course I have overuse injuries, but it's a little different also than trauma trapped in your body, which what so many people in society have, and they're running the same. It's almost the same hamster wheel with psych, your psych, your mind, sorry, I can't think of the word, with your mind. It's like, so now your body, your back hurts, your leg, your shoulders, all that. You're constantly in the doctor's office, same thing. Take this medicine instead of saying like, oh, let's see what something's trapped there. I mean, you want to treat it so they can be maybe pain free, so they could live, go to the store, go to whatever they have to do. But I would love the medical field to be like, what's maybe trapped in your body? It could be trauma, and where they would work, collaborate with someone like you with their patient, because so many of it is just trauma trapped in our bodies. It has nothing to do with an injury or something like that. So I just wanted to ask if you do that yourself. I love that you asked that. Is your practice only in person?
So I'll work with people all over the country and all over the world for that matter. And they'll travel to work with me if they want to do like an intensive, like 5 days or 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever they can manage of the working in person and really doing the practice together in person. And they might have like an all-day facilitation where they have a long psychedelic experience and I keep them safe and work with them through that. And when we do that, we'll do it virtually over the phone, doing therapy sessions where we're just talking just like this. And yeah, we can get in touch with a lot of that stored up pain. I have a lot of people who have chronic pain, and most of the times they won't even tell me about it. They're here to work on something that's far more pressing, and they'll get relief through through their chronic pain. And they'll tell me at the end, "Hey, I didn't tell you this, but I have this pain in this area, and I've gotten relief from it." And it makes perfect sense because when you feel an emotion, you feel it physiologically. When you're angry, your heartbeat increases, your breathing gets labored, your muscles contract and get very tense, your body temperature fluctuates up and down. You have cortisol, stress hormones, adrenaline, histamines pumping through your body. Same thing when you're feeling fear. Your stomach contracts, your body temperature drops, your whole body freezes. Um, all of our emotions have these physiological responses to them. So when our bodies are developing, when we're children, if we're developing in relationship to a stressful environment or an environment that is not nurturing us in some way, or worse, an environment that is causing us physical, emotional, mental harm through negligence, abuse, so on. That's the environment that our body is developing in relationship to. So our baseline for stress hormones and other hormones pumping through our body is very high. We're always in this state of fight or flight. And so later in life, when we're adults, when I'm sitting on my $5 meditation cushion on a dirty IKEA rug, I notice right away I don't feel safe. And my stomach's contracting or my body's contracting, and there's nothing here that is causing me to not feel safe. That is just the generalized fear that I've internalized from the developing in a very dangerous situation. And we'll call that anxiety. It's just constant. There's nothing here to be afraid of. It's pain or fear from the past. And now it's just the world that I'm afraid of. So my body is always tense. And what do I want to do? Go to my phone, distract, disconnect right away. But if I can be aware of that and make choices and say, well, I'm going to focus in on that feeling. I'm going to try to be present with it and try to get curious about it, understand why it's here, and try to meet those needs in constructive ways. Then I can start to pass that pain. And what happens? My body starts to relax for one of the first times. But if I just go onto YouTube and I pay attention to all the politics that are happening and all of the other things in the world, oh, now I have a reason to be afraid. See, the way that our bodies work is we like to think that something's happening here and therefore I'm afraid, right? And a lot of the times that can be the case. Um, but when we go through trauma and it gets stored in the body, and especially at an early age, and our baseline for it is very high, it's actually the other way around. So if you think like you have a dream and there's a scary crab man in tidy whities chasing you, so you're really scared and you're running away from him, you would say, this crab man is chasing me, so I'm scared. But that's not how the brain works. That's not how our emotional circuits work. The brain is stacked upon layers. there's different layers of evolutionary development in terms of our neurology. So at the very base of all this is our emotions. Emotions always precede thoughts and symbols and perceptions. The ability to think rationally and to think symbolically, this is at the frontal part of our brain, which is the more recently developed part of our anatomy. So when we have a dream that the scary crab man is chasing us, it's not the scary crab man that we're afraid of. We're afraid. And so the mind is creating the symbol to justify why we're afraid. So all of these things that are happening around me a lot of the time are perceptions or a result of this fear that has been living in my body for as long as I've been alive. And my body is always reacting to that. So, in order to process that trauma that's stored in the body, I have to get back in touch with those feelings in my body. I have to learn to process that and soothe it and comfort it and be in tune with it in the moment. So, when something is happening that is justifying an actual fear or an anger response, I have to be in tune with it so I can express it as it's coming up in, of course, healthy, constructive ways.
I love that you said all that because I think I have a son who is 28 and I have a son who's 24. And that age group, everyone has anxiety. And as in there, even in the friend group or just everywhere, it's like it's accepted, like, oh, it's just anxiety. We all have it. And it like drives me nuts because it's not true. It's like not everyone has it, they have it, but they don't have to have it for that very reason. I don't think everyone that has anxiety has it from their past. I think it's become almost like a thing to have now. Like, the second you feel anything, you have anxiety. But going back to that learning to sit with it and having it from childhood, do you think that since it's living in your body, that you are subconsciously searching for something that's going to cause it?
Yeah, that's exactly how it is. The emotion precedes the mental part. So when we're constantly feeling this, we'll find it. We'll find some reason if there's all this repressed fear. And just like these younger generations that you're talking about, they have these feelings and so they have anxiety. Well, the problem is they have these feelings and they don't know what to do with them because nobody ever taught them how to process emotions. So no baby is born into this world knowing how to process emotions. Dan Siegel refers to the development of emotional processing as interpersonal neurobiology, a fancy word that means that the unregulated, immature, undeveloped nervous system of a baby literally downloads information from the mature, regulated nervous system of the adult. But what happens when the adult is not mature, regulated, or developed themselves? Or even further, what happens if the adult is getting modern parenting advice from their doctor or the parenting expert that says, when your baby's crying, leave them alone and let them cry it out? So we have this emotional circuit in our bodies, which is called the panic grief emotional circuit. We have seven of them, but this one in particular is designed, it's often referred to as the call the loved ones home. And we can find this in so many animals. Any animal that really rears their children directly has this emotional circuit. If a baby bird falls out of a nest, what does it do? It calls out. It feels an incredible amount of panic. This panic grief gets activated and it screams, it cries, and that tells the mother to come pick it up, bring it back to the nest, and comfort it. And then the panic resolves. But if that parent is getting modern parenting advice that says, don't hold your baby when they cry, this panic inside the child never resolves and it's constant, and that's what the body develops to, is this high level of panic, and that never ever goes away. And so then we have this overactive emotional circuit. We don't know what to do with it. This becomes normal, and then later in life we have anxiety because we're constantly feeling that anxiety, that panic, that nervousness of something terrible is about to go wrong and it's not going to resolve, and I don't know what to do with it.
And it's like almost like an answer of society as a whole with that, just that one explanation. The panic grief, like I love that because I didn't adhere to that. I didn't like that, like cried out stuff. When you have an infant or a 4-year-old throwing a tantrum because they didn't get ice cream, are two different kind of like scenarios. I think people think that it's that you're spoiling your infant when you're not picking them up and they were born 8 weeks ago. Like, I think it's common sense, but that's not always what society is doing common sense. Um, when do you have like a timeline with patients? Like I like to see patients at least 12 weeks, at least 16 weeks, 4 weeks. What is like a timeline for you that you feel is upfront that you would tell like a potential client or patient?
So I have a minimum amount of time that I'll work with people, which is about 6 weeks. And we'll do about 4 weeks of preparation work, and then they can have a longer psychedelic experience if they like, and then I'll help them for the week after that as well. And of course, many people elect to do a lot more than that. My goal in this therapy is to help people build the skills and the tools that they need to navigate the things that they're experiencing and to do so without me. So, of course, you don't have to do it alone. And, if we didn't have somebody to help us regulate or express our emotions or process our emotions, we're going to spend the rest of our lives learning how to do that. And you don't have to do that alone. So people will often come back to work with me. But the goal that I have is to work with them for certain blocks, certain periods of time, and then for them to go and to practice these things and to develop the practice themselves, and ideally to do it without me. Of course, when they get stuck, as we all do, or when they hit a block or they hit a road bump, whatever, then of course I'm always available. But yeah, 6 to 8 weeks each time, and they might work with me once, twice, sometimes 3 times a year. But for the most part, when I work with people, is they find within those 6 weeks that we get enough of a foundation underneath them to where they can go and do these things on their own. And then when they get stuck, they come back.
That's great to hear. To give the analogy, I used to be a personal trainer, and I used to say that to my clients, like, I'm here to teach you how to, for the rest of your life, go to any gym in the world, and after a certain amount of time, you won't need me anymore, and you'll be able to do it on your own. It's a little bit of the same. And like you said, doesn't mean that you won't want to uh more help when you feel you either need it, or maybe there's more to, I feel with all, there's always more to learn. There's always more things that we could learn how to keep ourselves, what I like to say, that inner peace and that inner calm. And I'm not saying I have that all the time either. I'm just grateful for some of the tools that I acquired, and meeting people like you. It reminds me of how much more work I actually have to do on myself. So I appreciate so much what you're doing. What else would you want to tell the listeners about you and your practice?
Well, first thing is just like how people adapt to the pain that we were talking about earlier about I'll go be important, I'll be needed, I'll be valued. Another belief that often comes up is that I have to be strong, I have to be independent, I have to do it on my own. I certainly have that one as well. And I see it in a lot of people. And so the reaching out, the finding a way to connect with somebody, to be vulnerable and say, I need some help, is a very important part of the process itself. Humans are not meant to live in isolation on their own little islands, independent of one another. We're a social, communal species. We need the connection. And so, if we have this belief of I'm not good enough and I have to be strong and independent and figure all this stuff out on my own, a good way to work with that is first to identify it and then, of course, to allow yourself to go and ask for help. And that's a big part of why we do the smaller brackets of working is because a lot of the times it's very difficult for people to ask for help. And so when we step away and you go and practice this on your own, being able to reach back out when you get stuck and say, "Hey, I could use some help in this area." That's a big part of the healing itself.
Yeah, it's not one and done, not like a one and done thing. And even with ayahuasca ceremonies, even if you never decided to do another ceremony, you had a great ceremony, whatever it is, there's so much, they call it integration. There's so much that you have to keep going with. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm cured, I'm healed. I think it's a lifetime journey. And that's part of why we're here. It's a journey of, like I said, with you, maybe they won't use you 365 days a year, but there's going to come a time where you just need help to process something. And I love that you said we're not here to be alone, because I tend to be a little bit of a lone wolf, thinking that I can do things on my own, but I'm also social. I call myself an introverted extrovert because we're communal. We were, that's how ancestors, no matter where you're from, we all came from communities where we all lived together. Our elders taught us, and everything was community. Everything was about being around everybody else, families. It's like a lion pride almost, but it was humans, right? So I like that you said that, because I think so many people who are suffering isolate first and foremost, and also they wait until they're so desperate. So do you find that people come to me when they're like almost desperate? I see that in the ayahuasca community where people are like so desperate, they're ready to take themselves out. And
Yeah.
I'm here. I want the listeners to hear, like, I would hope that please don't do that. Try and hear us, and just where you're not meant to go through the things alone. So ask before you get to that point. But I'm asking you, do you find that a lot of your people come to you like at that desperation stage?
Yeah, I won't say all of them or the majority of them. Um, but well, I won't say either way. Now that I really think about it, yeah, even the people, yeah, a lot of the times, it won't be like an active suicidal. I don't have a plan in place. I'm not getting ready to take action. I had one person who said, but if I casually get hit by the bus when I walk out of here, that would be great too. Um, I've had lots of people who were saying this is their last option. Um, Sometimes they would tell me at the end, like right before we were almost done, and they would say, just so you know, this was my last stop, which, I can pick up on those things. Um, and they would say, but just so we're on the same page together, is that's not even on the table anymore. They had built enough of the resources, the skills and tools, the foundation to navigate the difficulties in life and to enjoy the wonderful in experiences that come in life as well. See, when we suppress our emotions, when we stuff them down, you can't suppress just one of them, right? It's a pattern of emotional suppression. You can't say, well, I would like to keep the joy, but I'll get rid of the pain and I'll get rid of the anger. No, they all go. And so once we learn how to navigate the difficulties, the pain, the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the shame, the disgust, we can also really reconnect with the joy as well. And while I won't say that life gets easier by any means, it can definitely get more enjoyable and it can get less overwhelming and less controlling. And that can happen very quickly within weeks with the right support.
And it shows you the trust that they have in you, that they went and whatever. And it's actually proof, if you want to use that word, that how you go about it really helps them, because that's just one sitting, right? With the person who's like ready to just not be here anymore. And I think you can attest to this. People don't want to kill themselves because they feel like it. They just don't want to feel that, the emotional pain, all that pain. And if you can show them how to navigate, because you, like you just said, you're not going to get rid of pain. You're not going to go through your life going through rainbows and butterflies. I never feel shitty again. You learn to navigate it, regulate it, feel it, process it, and then it can leave you. Different things may bring it back for different reasons, but it is part of the human experience. And that's what I want people to hear. We're not supposed to go through life or through rainbows and butterflies, and we're not supposed to go through life alone and strong and all the things. We are, spiritual beings having a human experience, and we are here to feel all the things. And I don't know when it began where we're taught not to feel the things, but that's where we are in society now. And that's why we're in this predicament of society where everyone, they're not connected to themselves on a spiritual level and their inner beings. And I think the world is very confused right now and mixed up, and very much need of people like you. So I appreciate what you're doing. So how can people find you if they're interested in working with you? And how do you go
Uh,
about that? Is there a consultation? Like, how does it work?
Yeah, my website's the best way,
Oh,
which I'll happily share. I think I already shared it with you and we can link
yeah,
it.
I'll put your website, the show notes, and I might be checking that out myself actually.
Yep.
Yes, I would love to do some more inner work for myself. So I'd like to ask you two questions that I like to ask my guests. My first one, and this one is going to be like a loaded question for you since you gave a little bit of your history, but if you could go back in time and speak to your younger self, whatever age you want to pick, what is one thing you would like to eat? I don't like to say what's a piece of advice because that's like the usual, and you could do that. But
Mhm.
I like to ask, like, what would you say? Would it be advice? Would you give love? Like, what would you like to tell your younger self if you could?
Yeah. A funny experience was I was sitting in a circle. It was a like a therapy community, support group kind of circle. And we were going around and doing this exercise, and I was just not about it, to say the least. And so I'm getting, like, why am I even here? And the person who was before me, she comes up and I was like one of the last people to go. So like probably 10 people had gone in front of me. And each person's like going back and they're holding themselves and they're like, "You're safe. I love you. You're loved. You're going to get through this." They're offering their younger self all this encouragement. And the girl next to me goes, "Girl, you are going to love TV because you are not safe. You are not loved. You are not going to make it through this easily. But I'll tell you what, you are going to love TV." And I just thought that was one of the funniest things I had ever seen in one of those circles. It was very disarming for me. So, when we're talking about going to a younger version of ourselves, it's a lot like when we're raising children. We don't want to take away the pain. We don't want to protect them and stop them from going through it because we wouldn't do a child any service by doing that because at some point we won't be there and they have to go through those situations. Instead, what we want to do is we want to be there to go through it with them and to offer them a safe place, a safe refuge, a safe foundation in which they can go out and experience the world and come back and have their safety when needed. So, whenever I feel the pain from the past, like this part of me, just coming on the podcast alone was a big deal for me because there's a part of me that wants to be very small and not be seen and hide and just disappear and fade into the distance. Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of us have that. And so whenever I feel that fear, that part of me gets activated. What that part really needs is for there to be a nurturing, attuned, present, mature, hopefully regulated person that can go through it with them. And so I'm going to be that person. So I just have to take that fear, that part of me that's all afraid, and I have to let him sit on my lap and put my arm over his shoulder and say, "We got this, buddy. We're in this together." And so anytime that I'm feeling that pain from the past and I connect with it, that's what I try to do, is try to offer myself the support and the things that I needed that I didn't get when I was going through that pain to begin with.
And that's why I asked the question. That's why with you, I said it doesn't have to be advice because when I ask that question, people usually give the advice like, "Oh, I tell my younger self to listen to myself and have more confidence." And I think that's great for them to say that because then they're um maybe they feel less regretful or something that they got it out of their off their chest. But that's really more what I was when I ask it. It's like, what would you say to the little boy in you? What would you say to the little girl in you? Like, what does that child need from you today to hear or to, like you said, go with it together? I like to just I do a lot of inner child work, and I'm not sure if I do it right or wrong or whatever, but I always picture myself picking up my younger self and giving myself what I feel I didn't get as a child. So, and saying the things, and I do it to myself. Um, just for the listeners know, when you're on a healing journey, you do a lot of self conversations, and I think that's what people forget. Like they don't have the conversations with themselves, but you learn to have a lot of conversations with yourself because it's a great analogy that we are the drivers of the school bus, and there's 15 of our past us behind us from our past that want our attention and want us to be heard or want to be held or want to be loved or whatever, all the things. And they're all screaming for your attention. You have to, sit with them and say, what do you need? what do and take time. And that's what I do to myself. Sometimes I'll ask myself, I don't really ask myself which child this is, just what's coming up, what needs to be addressed, what needs to be nurtured and cared for. And sometimes I can't even figure it out, to be honest with you, but I do take that step back. But I just found a card I had. I used to collect stationery as a kid, and there's a little girl in the front. I have it in this room because I meditate in this room every morning. And it's a little girl from the back that looks exactly like how I looked, hugging a horse. And I used to love horses. And I like looking at that because it reminds me that she's still here, in here. And I was talking teary eyes, and she needs me. And I need her too. You know what I mean? And we have to remember and give ourselves the stuff that we didn't have now, instead of being like, oh, I didn't get this, and have that like chip on your shoulder. Like you're given the opportunity to almost like reparent yourself in a sense. So
That's
thank you.
absolutely right.
And shows you that I got a lot of stuff still going on. I'm getting teary eyed.
Yeah,
Now
we
I know,
all do.
and this is like a real, I don't know what you want to call this, the newbie thing, but I love affirmations because people that follow me know this. Like, I am, as much as I am in this field and I am a healer and I can help people and all the things and have all the knowledge and wisdom, I am my own worst critic and my voice is still very, very loud. So I'm very big on affirmations and kind of like, using the little girl. So when I have this negative talk, I'm like, why? How can you say that to a child, right? How can you say that to anyone that you love? So I'm big on affirmations and, positive affirmations, of course. So I like to ask my guests, I'm a big I am person. So what would your I am be for just this time in your life? It doesn't have to be for your whole life. Just like right now, your I am.
Hmm. Well, actually, I might go just a sidestep on that one for a second and come right back. Can I ask you a personal question?
Yes.
That harsh self-critic that you have there, that voice that's always criticizing, evaluating, judging, where'd you learn that?
Good question. Because I'm assuming, I don't remember my parents having those words whatsoever.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I'm speculating it's my parents, and to be quite honest, a little bit of my ex-husband,
Okay.
who I
So, yeah. So, whose voice do you think it is?
I've done this. I've asked. I utilize it as my own. Like I
Yeah, of
hear
course.
myself.
Yeah, but you learned it from somebody or from somewhere. So, that voice might not be your own. And so, one exercise that people can do in this situation is when that voice is there, of course, there's a part of you that's reacting to it. How did it make you feel when you were being judged or evaluated or criticized? Terrible, right? Yeah. So what we can do is look at what did you really need, and probably you might find a boundary there would be nice. And so some people will hear that voice and they'll say, "Hi, Dad. Fuck off, Dad." Or, no, I don't need that right now. Or, "Thank you. I can see that you're really trying to help me. You're trying to make me the most likable, respected, valuable person out there, but I'm plenty valuable without that.
Right.
Thank you. It's not helping." So really engaging with that voice, because with that analogy that you used of the school bus, right? What happens is one of those past little versions of us jumps up in the driver's seat and is driving us, and we're in the back over there. And instead, what we want to do is we really want to try and take care of that voice. We want to really try to comfort it and soothe that voice and see what were the needs that were really needed there that went unmet. And most of the times, it's somebody to just see them and be with them and validate them and comfort them in some way.
Absolutely. I think I started. I mean, I feel like there's so many different reasons why became what I am now, like to help others people. But I don't even know where I was going with this. You asked me a question. I forgot. But with the voice, since I couldn't really name who exactly it's from, like a lot of people will be like, oh, my mom was so critical. This is her voice. I don't have it. Maybe she did. She definitely is critical, but I don't remember her specifically saying anything. So I learned, and I don't know if this is right or wrong, to give it like almost an ugly voice, like an ugly lady's voice. So like whatever name that you feel is like really like a real crappy name, give the voice that name so that you could make sure that it's not yours. It's that ugly name that you don't like, whatever. So is that something you can do as opposed to like pinpointing it onto a parent or whoever, a family member?
You could. It is a part of you. It's just that you learned it from somewhere. So how would it make you feel if somebody was giving you a really crappy name or a crappy voice?
True. Ah,
Uh,
like, yeah, because it is a part of you, like you said. And I think going back to the beginning of the conversation, it is, and we could talk about NLP and the neurolinguistic and your patterns of thinking that are so deep penetrated. So that's almost my default. But I also wonder if I do it because it's comfort. That's like we spoke about it. It's comforting, but I don't like it. I'm so
mhm.
used to it. It's almost like a automatic pilot.
Yeah.
And instead of it being automatic pilot the other way around, that's the autopilot. And it's much, much better now, extremely better, but it's still there. And I think to go deep into it, then I get mad at myself that I had it.
Judgmental,
Right. Because
critical.
I
Mhm.
should know better, right? I should know better. And then
What's the belief about yourself there with the I should have known better?
um probably that I help people with this all the time and that you expect yourself to be perfect and not,
Uh-huh.
not fall into that trap.
Uh-huh. Sounds like I'm not good enough.
Hmm. Oh, I definitely have a lot of that.
hmm
Definitely have a
So the practice here is if we want to come off of autopilot, meaning we want to enact some agency, some responsibility, we want to make choices. The prerequisite for all of those is awareness. So we just try to notice every time that voice comes up. And even if it's just there it is again. Hi. Hey, old friend. Ain't seen you in 30 seconds. You want some tea? Right? Instead of fighting these things and trying to push them away or struggling with them, making them go away, let's try to be friends with it. And the more that we can get to know these patterns that we have, the more that we can become friends with them and understand them, the less control they have over us. So rather than this being some overwhelming part of us, this criticizing, critical, judgmental, evaluatory voice that's always going, it can just be the same old little old friend that always wants to come and help, but things go wrong when they get involved. So you're more than welcome to come around. You've been friends for your whole life, but you're definitely not driving the car. Let me get us where you want to go. You go ahead and sit in the car seat in the back, and I'll get us there nice and
I
safe.
like that. And I was just about to say now I made it myself because I've said that to people and myself, like become friends with that emotion, become friends with that voice. So sometimes, I'm human, you forget and you just get in your stuff, but I do have
hmm
awareness or else I wouldn't even know that it was going on. And that's
Of course.
what I help people too, because I think that's the number one thing I actually use in my coaching is the awareness has to come first. If you don't have
hmm
it, then you don't even probably think you have anything going on. You don't know why. You may
Right.
be you may be feeling so unfulfilled in your life and you don't know why because you're so unaware. So I like to help people with that. So thank you for that. So
hmm
sidestep back to your I am.
Yeah. So in that case, it'd probably be something similar to what you're doing. I'm becoming more flexible. I'm becoming more present. I'm becoming more safe. I'm becoming more of who I was before all of this pain forced me to adapt to it.
I love all those. And I like to, tell the audience that if you say like, I don't know what I am, just listen to what some of the guests say because it can hold true for you. And I like that you said becoming because a lot of times people be like, I don't know what I am. You could say I am becoming or I am learning or I am even trying because sometimes people can't say like I am or I am happy, whatever. I am learning to find happiness in the world. I am learning to become a better listener, instead of like,
hmm
I'm a great listener. So thank you for saying those. Those resonated with me as well. So thank you so much. And I so appreciate you coming. I got a lot out of this and I will gladly send people your way, especially since it's virtual, because I wasn't sure before we spoke if it was only in person. You're in Oregon, just so people know, right? You're in
hmm
Oregon.
That's right.
Um, and that's it. I appreciate what you're doing, and the world needs more of you around. So hopefully you can spread the word and help more people each and every day. And with that, I wish you and all the listeners much love and light. Until next time, take care.
Thank you.